Let's go! LSU Alabama preview. I know you guys are going to be watching the game kind of like this. First thing right off the top, I know a lot of you want to talk about the next head coach at LSU. Boom, in the top right corner, my number one candidate. The major announcement for this weekend is that we will be doing a pre-game live stream. We will not be doing a halftime, but I am going to try to do a super late night post game. And as you see here, Joe Burrow, of course, running against Alabama. And there's Joe Burrow again with Zach Van Rosenberg. And then who can forget this guy right here in the LSU Alabama game. So yeah, you know, it's So let's talk about this game. The injuries. And what I'm about to say is going to sound really, really wild, but when you really think about it, it's true. This is going to be, in the history of the modern day post-Saban era, this will be the worst roster we will have fielded in a long time. A long time, because of the injuries. And it is reported now that Mason Smith has been seen in crutches throughout this week. So it's looking like he's not going to be healthy and ready to go, which leads me to believe every five-star LSU has on its roster will not be ready to play for the Alabama game. And that obviously sucks a lot. We're missing legit every single one of our best defensive backs, okay? The truth of the matter is this injury bug is very wild. Normally, when you have a bye week, your team gets healthier, but the exact opposite has happened. It really is unprecedented, the amount of injuries LSU's had. I have a few theories behind it, but still, I mean, this is really crazy, which is kind of wild because in 2019, we had a ridiculous amount of injury luck. I think the second big point of this game is Alabama themselves. It's crazy to say because they are the number 2 team in the eyes of the college football playoff, but this is Saban's worst team in a while. Now, they're still really, really good, and I might sprinkle a little on them being the eventual national champions this year, but this is not a complete football team. They had a scare in Gainesville earlier this year where they only won by 2. The Tennessee game that they most recently played was a little bit more competitive than what it looks like. And then, of course, they lost to Zach Calzada, who has been mostly meh as the starting quarterback at Texas A&M, and that's still pretty wild that Alabama lost that game against an A&M squad that was reeling. So yeah, you know, what's wild is if LSU had a decent team, I'm just talking about a decent team, we would have a shot at winning this football game. But that's the point. We are not decent. We are so poorly coached up to this point in the season. And we've made this point plenty of times. This schedule was very favorable to LSU this year. And we just wasted it. There's just no other way around it. And I think it's mostly because, well, the wheels have come off in a year no one really is that great in the SEC. It's mostly because of Ed Orgeron. So the big story from an LSU perspective, well, obviously, Alabama fans are going to hurl some really nasty things towards Ed Orgeron, as they should, especially after what Ed Orgeron did on their field, which, full disclosure, I liked a lot. I don't mind when a head coach talks trash like that. It's just you better be able to back it up, and Ed Orgeron did not back it up. Alabama fans, and we would probably do the same thing if the shoe was on the other foot. They're not going to let Ed Orgeron forget about that. So it's going to be a pretty nasty homecoming for Ed Orgeron, who once again pulled off the biggest regular season win ever in Tuscaloosa. Now, look, not only is that going to be a big story, this to me is an even bigger story. How will Ed Orgeron actually coach this game? because I know I'm laughing a bunch, but this week has been just so wild. Our video on Monday where, we tweeted out the press conference clip that went viral, and I'm just saying, if we didn't tweet it out, people would not have seen the pure insanity of what he said. It really is still wild. Him saying that his own coaching staff is unbelievably predictable, which is funny because the predictability, in particular of the LSU defense, but to an extent the LSU offense, was something we called out after the Mississippi State game from 2020, okay? And we've never fixed the predictability issue. And you guys saw the photo of Patrick Queen, where Patrick Queen had the big interception in the first half of the LSU Bama game, and we scored another touchdown with Clyde to make it a 33-13 game before the half. Dave Aranda coached a near-perfect half in that first half on defense. Now, in the second half, Alabama did mount a comeback, but still, it is wild how well Dave Aranda coached that first half versus Alabama, and it didn't help that Ed Orgeron made his the biggest coaching gaffe of 2019 in the second half of the game, where he didn't go for it on 4th and 1 with the greatest college quarterback of all time in plus territory, which eventually allowed the LSU-Alabama comeback. It allowed Alabama to get back into the game. So, how Ed Orgeron actually coaches this game is going to be key, because once again, the reason why we made such a big deal about Monday's press conference in that clip is that we finally got to hear Ed Orgeron really bluntly talk about the predictable nature of his football team. It's never really been asked, and ironically, it wasn't really asked in this press conference. It just kind of got brought up by Orgeron when he was asked about self-scouting, and it's just strange. I've never seen something so bizarre where a head coach admits the one thing that cost him this job this far into it. Did it just come to him that his defense was as predictable as it's been these past couple of seasons? We'll never really know, but still, Ed Orgeron has nothing to lose here. Just be exotic, do different things. Just don't do what you did versus Ole Miss in every other game, which is 4 down linemen, no blitzing, and man coverage on every snap, which is going to lead to another blowout loss. Prediction time. So LSU currently a 28.5 point underdog. Now, Vegas has been off on LSU quite a few times this year. They were a slight favorite against UCLA, lost by double digits. They were a double-digit underdog against Florida, and they beat them. So, yes, we've seen some erratic, non-accurate Vegas results, but still LSU is 3-5 against the number. And that's the funny thing. Can LSU cover a gigantic spread? The spread was about the same as it was last year, and Alabama is now at home. And they do have a talented quarterback in Bryce Young, and they do have talented wide receivers. And Will Anderson is as good of an edge player as there is in the country on the defensive side of the ball. But I do think Alabama's secondary is a question mark, and even though we don't have Kayshawn, we still have Jack Bash and BTJ. So, Max Johnson's health is another storyline. He looked a little sluggish versus Ole Miss. So, yeah, there's so many different injury variables that we don't know about. And the weather, once again, looks pretty good in Tuscaloosa. So, I could see the over clearing in this matchup at 66.5. But still, I don't know if I could rationally put money down 28.5 for LSU to cover. I will say this though. Max Johnson did play fine versus Alabama last year in the limited action he saw in the second half. Now, once again, those were garbage time reps, but still. So, maybe I could see a few late touchdowns LSU can score to make this some kind of competitive game, but I'm still going to go with the final score here of Alabama 49, LSU 24. I slobbered a little bit. But still, I do think Alabama wins comfortably. Boom! Hope it's not the case. I hope they are putting Max Johnson on his shoulders and recreating this Joe Burrow photograph magically. You never know what can happen. But yes, don't forget pregame show. It should be a good one. And let me know down below. Comment down below if you would like a midnight live stream postgame. Why not? Huh? It is Power Hour LSU. Boom. So a few of you didn't like that I cut off what's on the dinner menu. This got I got a lot of messages about this. So tonight I am not cutting off the dinner menu, and we are having, what are we having?